All right, this is an interesting one. Oresti Patricios is the Chief Executive Officer of the research and content company Ornico and joins us now with details on something called the Social Media Landscape Report, and there is much to unpack. First of all, what did you set out to establish? And I think you did this with the company Worldwide Works.
That's correct. If you remember, 2 years ago we bought Fuseware. And ultimately, that was a part of the report that was there. But we could add extra into this report because of the fact that that we've got brands, quite a lot of brands that we work together. So what did we want to try and establish was really to understand what are digital agencies, what are creative agencies, and what are brands ultimately looking to do in the future. So we did this research in 2016, and the majority of that research was, what are you intending to do about social media in the next 12 months?
What's the broad understanding within the brand landscape about social media?
That is definitely in a growth phase. There's no doubt about it. And you see how it's growing from when we're comparing the research from the 2 years back on how much more budget they're putting behind social media. But also the fact that agencies and brands are now starting to understand social media a lot more than they did in the past.
It's not only the brands themselves, but it's the chief executive. And you talk about the age of the social CEO, and by that you're not referring to high attendance at cocktail parties. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, you often see how if the CEO is driving the social media, how well that social media is kind of working across reach, engagement, content, and everything. It doesn't necessarily say it's only that factor. But if the CEO is on it and he understands the social media, you do see a much better proliferation of that social media.
Is a brand in a difficult place if the CEO is not involved?
No, not necessarily. It just works a lot better.
Facebook's king.
Facebook?
Facebook is king.
Facebook is king. Facebook is king across the advertising. So when we put in a new question this year, and that was, where do you intend putting most of your advertising budget? In which social media platform? And Facebook came out by far.
What's the advantage that brands are seeing in that strategy?
I think they understand Facebook a lot more. Also, in terms of being able to measure the effectiveness, it's much easier across Facebook. And they've got a lot more control over Facebook.
One of the difficulties, whether it's Facebook or any of the other social media platforms, is the measurement of effectiveness. Are brands getting that right?
So they are. It depends on how you measure your effectiveness. So what's critical is understanding what is your campaign, what do you want to do out of your campaign in the first place. It's not only about outputs, and a lot of the social media just give you the output figures. It's really about the outcome. So what is the outcome out of that social media? Is it to increase sales? Isn't it? And how do you tie it back internally?
What did you discern, Oresti, about money being put into this? In other words, are people allocating sufficient budget?
When you looked at that report, a lot of it, what was your, what holds you back in social media? A lot of it was budget.
Why?
So they feel that both brands and agencies are feeling there's not enough money being put into brands. I suppose because maybe the research doesn't show any of that. But I mean, I'm suspecting is that people are not really used to it at this stage. But also, there's not enough value in terms of the numbers and the effectiveness.
What brands are getting it right? Did you look at that?
We did look at that, and Mercedes-Benz was getting a really they were the top brand.
What is Mercedes doing differently?
I think in terms of their content, a lot of their content, it was fantastic content, believe it or not, and it was shared quite a lot. So,
and it's principally visual content. Well-produced visual content.
Yeah, plays a huge role. And I think what was happening is the amount of shared actually helped with that platform and getting out to the reach of people.
Does that translate necessarily into sales, though?
Well, sometimes it doesn't, but I mean,
it's about brand building.
It's all about brand building, and hopefully brand building backs up into
So
sales.
in conclusion then, what's the one big takeout here? What's the one thing that surprised you with the research?
The one thing that surprised me was how much money was that people were really looking at Facebook and putting a lot of money behind Facebook. Because remember, there's Instagram, there's Snapchat, there's so many other mediums and Twitter. Everybody's on Twitter, and yet they weren't putting the money behind Twitter. The money was really, really going behind Facebook.
And I'm sure that's going to continue in 2017 as well. Oresti Patricios from Ornico, thank you very much indeed. It's called the Social Media Landscape Report.
Thank you, Jeremy.